The Conquering Star versus the Heart of the Forest. These beasts are complete opposites of one another. One creates life with every step that he takes. The other one infects life with each breath that he makes. But what would happen if these beasts faced one another in combat? Would the bright eclipse show the lone wolf why the elder dragons are so feared? Or can the Sylvan deity show just how much rage he really has? I will compare their speed, their attack power, and their abilities to see just what beast would win. So without any further ado, out of both creatures that are my favorite monsters in media, let's see who would win. Sylvanos is known both as the most dangerous and the most powerful creature in the entire continent of Rivals of Aether, with an incredibly bad temper to match. But how does a Sylvan creature attain such an anger? What happened? Well, I can tell you. Years ago, when Sylvanos was more tranquil, the citizens of Aether ransacked his ecosystem. Whether cutting the trees for materials or burning them, it didn't matter. The Sylvan deity saw that his kingdom was coming into corruption of these creatures. So he did what any force of nature could, and raged against the mortals. He spread his rule throughout the continent of Aether, plaguing lands that he shouldn't have, whether it be the glaciers, the muddy waters, the sand. He tried everything in order to get back his reign. And his reach would have been wider until the Earth people did what they did best and make a giant wall to protect the Aether citizens from such a beast. Now he plagues the forest grounds, waiting for any single person to go into his domain and kill them. So now that you know a little of his past, let's look at how powerful he really is. There are two feats that we can look in particular in order to gauge Sylvanos' strength. One made by him, and another made by another combatant of the Rivals of Aether crew, Absa. Since most of the Rivals crew are relative to each other in strength, if we can find out one person's strength, we can normally find out the other. So let's just start with Absa. With lore, we are able to determine that at one point, Absa used her electrokinesis in order to cover an entire mountain in electricity. This same enhanced electricity is used so that she can fight other combatants, so it's very prevalent that we know just how much energy that this thing could have produced. If you were to actually do the math on this coverage, if you had the ability in order to cover an entire mountain in energy, this produces about mountain plus levels of energy. In scientific terms, almost 2 gigatons of energy. With this amount of energy, a few hits on a mountain would completely capsize it from the face of the planet. And this is consistent because Sylvanos himself has been able to produce this amount of energy with his own means. Although he does not produce electricity, the amount of energy that you would need in order to grow your plants across the continent of Aether would have to be at least large mountain levels of energy, maybe even more considering the fact that Sylvanos, out of every single other creature of Aether, is the strongest. I believe with all of this information, we can then easily put his AP, which is attack power, to large mountain levels of force. But what about his speed? Well, with this, we can simply use Absa again as a measuring stick in order to see just how fast this creature is. As you know, Absa uses Lightning Bolt in order to battle the creatures of Aether. If we can understand how fast a Lightning Bolt is, we can easily find out just how fast this creature is. Here, I'll show you an example. The speed of sound is 760 miles per hour, which is incredibly fast. The speed of a lightning bolt is conservatively at 200,000 miles per hour. Comparing them both, the speed of lightning is about 263 times the speed of sound, and in a debate sort of terms, it would be massively hypersonic. Which might not be the most impressive part, because we know that Absa enhances this lightning from time to time in order to get stronger, so it could be even faster than this. But it's fine, we don't really need that argument for right now. The last thing we have to consider is all the abilities that Sylvanos has in his arsenal. Although a little plain, Sylvanos' abilities are surprisingly tactile for what they are. For example, his rage can certainly be good against certain opponents. Because of it, Sylvanos will always go for the kill no matter what. So no amount of trickery or talking to the creature is going to get you a blind spot. Sylvanos sees you, he is going to attack you, which is very good in a fight. Another ability he has is to control plants and trees around him. See, every single time that Sylvanos steps onto something, he actually creates life. And with this life that he creates, he can actually control it in order to fight against other people. And remember, this grows as he keeps running, meaning if the fight continues more and more, if a person is not ready for these grass creatures, then they are going to be in for a world of surprise. Another underrated tactic that Sylvanos has is his range. See, he has a segmented part of his body that can go out and actually whip people meters away, meaning that he actually has a lot of distance that he can cover, and he does not need to be in front of you in order to actually hurt you. Add this on top of the fact that even if you were to try to get away from him, his burrowing skills are extremely good, able to go and just cleave good amounts of earth in the ground in order to avoid attacks and then pop up in order to finally chomp on someone. This makes Sylvanos an incredible creature when it comes to attrition, because you have to deal with not only a creature that does not tire and will not stop its rage, but will have, as the fight goes on, get more and more things in order to kill you and just get stronger. It's amazing. He is as simple as he is ferocious and effective at destroying every single foe that comes across him. But let's see if all of this is enough. Let's see what the SHAGARU MAGALA has in store for this Sylvan creature. The Magala line in Monster Hunter are some of the most popular creatures when it comes to the whole franchise, both for their design and their story applications when it came to Monster Hunter 4. But what about these creatures are so interesting? Why do people love them so much? Let me explain. Before we get a SHAGARU Magala, we get the infant version of it, the Gore Magala. This Elder Dragon, even though it's in its earlier stages, is still quite powerful for what it is. But it is not known for its speed and its strength. It is actually known for its corrupting nature to other animals. These species of wyverns are very unique when it comes to the Monster Hunter community, because they actually control a virus, and it's called the Frenzy Virus. It slowly corrupts the creature, making it very weak on the outside, and also on the inside afflicts the organs, making the voice box of creatures incredibly different to how they usually are. And this is only the beginning. As more and more time goes on, as the corruption goes, and as the Gore Magala becomes more mature in its age, what it does is that it sheds its black skin in order to become a golden wyvern of destruction, making others flee in its newfound strength, power, and more importantly, its even worse affliction for the Frenzy Virus. It affects all other creatures that are not Elder Dragons to corrupt their minds and make them mad. Which is why most people respect its power, its ability to invalidate ecosystems with its great toxic virus. But with its newfound strength, with its new speed, and more importantly, with its new, more powerful version of its toxin, is it able to beat down Sylvanos? Well, let's find out. SHAGARU MAGALA actually has its own feat when it comes to attack power in the series, so we don't really need to compare it to other creatures like, say, Sylvanos to Absa, because it has its own. In lore, we find out that SHAGARU MAGALA can actually, with its newfound energy, is able to blow up an entire mountain, making it its throne for other creatures in order to step to his abode. Which is actually very interesting, because the conversion of this energy actually gets him to almost the exact amount of attack power that Sylvanos has, putting him at mountain level to even mountain level plus ranges. Which is extremely good for this fight, because it actually means that both creatures can affect each other when it comes to damage. But what about speed? Speed in the Monster Hunter universe is very hard to calculate because there's not a lot of comparisons that you could make when it comes to other creatures. However, there is one that we can use. The same as Absa, we can use it as a sort of measuring stick for this type of Magala. And that is the great and powerful Kirin. See, Kirin is kind of like Gormagala. It's a lesser form of the Elder Dragons. However, because it's able to produce these sorts of speeds against the Hunter, and the Hunter has to face these sort of Magalas, we can actually get the speed relative to what a sort of SHAGARU Magala should be at. So if the Kirin can produce these sorts of lightning bolts, it only makes sense that SHAGARU Magala, which is a more than likely more powerful beast than it, and faster, is able to actually be at this relative pace. Meaning that, yet again, SHAGARU Magala actually has a stat that is equal to Sylvanos. This accentuates one thing, and the one thing is that the abilities of these creatures just might be the deciding factor. So, let's end it off with actually explaining in depth the ability of SHAGARU Magala. See, even though I've explained the Frenzy Virus to you, and even though it seems like a very broken ability that the SHAGARU Magala has, it actually kind of has a downside. At least for the humans of the Monster Hunter universe, when they are afflicted by the Frenzy Virus, they can actually break free from it by attacking the SHAGARU Magala multiple times. And not only that, when they attack the SHAGARU Magala, if they attack enough times, they actually gain a boost because of the virus, and are actually able to sustain it and gain strength within themselves in order to use against it. Of course, that's if you're good enough to keep attacking the beast over and over again. If you're afflicted by the virus and you don't attack SHAGARU Magala, it's actually the reverse, and you slowly gain less and less regeneration, and you can't heal as fast as you could. Again, this is for the humans, but what about the other monsters? See, there's 3 things that could potentially happen to you if you are afflicted by the Frenzy Virus if you're a monster. 1, if you're a lower creature, you actually can die from it. The second and third option are more interesting though. If you are entirely afflicted by the Frenzy Virus and you cannot get its system out of you, the creature will become frenzied. That is when the creature not only gets insane, but it actually gains more speed and more attack. A monster afflicted by the Frenzy Virus in this way only knows rage and is mentally unwell, almost to the point of insanity, where it tries to attack every single creature. But there's also a second form of the virus. This is called Apex. See, a strong creature with enough will in its heart in order to not be compromised with this virus can actually gain a sort of form from this sort of tragedy. This form is not only stronger, it's not only faster, but it actually makes the creature even more durable than they were if they were frenzied. So much so that hunters actually need to knock the apex out of monsters with a sort of gem that they specifically need to farm and attack them with. This is why the Frenzy Virus is a sort of double-edged sword. When it comes to creatures that are already weaker than you, it's very good at weakening them so that you can get a sort of death roll on them. But if a monster is at least comparable to your attack and your speed, you could, at some point in time as the match goes on, maybe make them even stronger and faster and even more fierce than you can actually deal with. So if Shagaru Magala has to beat Sylvanos, he actually has to make sure that he beats him in a very comparable time. Because if he inflicts the virus into Sylvanos, either way, if he becomes a frenzied version or an apex version of himself, it's going to get rough in the battlefield. Shagaru Magala does have two things in its arsenal in order to deal with something like this, however. It does have the ability to fly, which makes it a lot more hard in order to actually get him compared to what Sylvanos has to do on the ground. So it has that. But the Frenzy Virus also makes it so that he can explode energy onto the battlefield. Meaning that at some points with the Shagaru Magala, he can actually explode energy onto the battlefield, creating a whole mass of explosions across that Sylvanos has to deal with. But let's see if this is enough though. We have the stats and we have the abilities. Now, let's see what would happen if Sylvanos and Shagaru Magala fought. This battle will be placed on Heaven's Mount of Monster Hunter. This place is a symbol to Shagaru Magala, the sort of personification of their reign as atop most creatures. And while it is basking in the glow of its royalty, a small creature comes in. This small Zenogre looking creature has a piece of another Gore Magala in its mouth. It spits this creature out on the side of the mountain and begins to glare at the Shagaru Magala. The Shagaru Magala does not need any more time in order to figure out what's going on. It is preparing to fight. Sylvanos, with his vexing anger, is the first one to strike. The Shagaru Magala holds back the creature as it notices just how powerful it is, even for how tiny it looks. But the Gore Magala also knows how to fight, and he plays dirty. Shagaru opens its wingspan and its mouth to expel the virus that is contained within. The explosive reaction is definitely a surprise to Sylvanos, for he has not dealt with such things before. But he will deal with an opponent the same way, with a fierce ferocity. As the virus destroys his body and slowly his lungs, he begins to lunge at the creature after the explosive, creating a bunch of plant life across the stadium. He uses his tendrils to swipe and stab at the creature that he wants dead, getting a few cuts until he destroys the feeler on Shagaru's face. Shagaru finally realizes that Sylvanos is not a creature that should be trifled with. His strength, speed, and ferocity is just too much in order to just go ahead and take easily. So the creature finally does it. Shagaru Magala begins to rage across the battlefield, making the whole stadium and the whole clouds of the ecosystem dark with the virus, extending his feelers and extending his size in order to finally combat the creature that he thinks is just annoying. He encases his limbs with the explosive virus and starts to dart at Sylvanos, clawing at him with immense power. Not only does he do a lot of damage to the creature, but he also destroys his underlings. As fast as Sylvanos is able to create life, it snuffs it from existence. But the rageful deity is not done. The virus makes the color on its outside more and more purplish as dark mist begins to expand from his mouth. He becomes more and more insane and more rageful as the moments collide. He darts at the creature, spiraling in its sort of more beast-like form as it creates more and more wounds from claws and fangs. The explosions don't matter. The attacks don't matter, because he is nimble and he is agile and he will fell this beast. Shagaru Magala understands that if this ferocity keeps up with this beast, he will not be able to defeat him. He needs a last stand. But before that, it has to corrupt the creature with the ability that it's most known for, the Frenzy Virus. It creates more and more as it billows throughout the battlefield, corrupting every single part of the stage wherever possible. It is definitely affecting Sylvanos more and more as it is across the field. But for some reason, Sylvanos doesn't seem to be letting up. Even with all of this virus, even with the large quantity of it, it's not giving up. Its aggression, its thing is actually getting more and more unpleasant. It's getting worse. It's getting even more aggressive than he even thought. If only he could see what was going on in the Sylvan warrior's mind. The Sylvan warrior, even though he is damaged, will not let up in his ferocity. Although he feels weak, although he feels as though he can pass out at any moment, he doesn't, and he fights through this virus that is going into his system. But he doesn't just feel weak, he feels pain, he feels more and more anger within his body as the fight grows on. And all he just thinks about is how he wants to dig his nails through the Magala's face. It reminds him of the pain of that very day when the rival citizens took his ecosystem. That memory, that core inkling that the beast had was too much for the Frenzy Virus in order to corrupt. His rage, his discipline, his anger was so controlled that the virus within himself knelt before him. Sylvanos, as the fight went on, did not become a frenzied creature, but became something else. An apex. The SHAGARU saw the creature that he was fighting and saw how powerful it became and realized that maybe it was too late. But either way, this was the coup de grace. All the virus energy that he collected on the battlefield, he decided to explode it all into once in order to at least, at the very end, destroy this new creature that he had created. And although the creature could not speak as we speak, you can hear it bellow in its own ancient language. I am the conquering star. Unfortunately, Apex Sylvanos had his own retort. I am the heart of the forest. And as the explosion went on, we see the dark clusters of the arena go into fruition. The SHAGARU believes that he has won the fight. But we see as the dust cloud settles that Apex Sylvanos is there, unfettered by the damage. With its new power, with its new speed, with its new ferocity, it takes no time to finally behead the creature with a sharp swipe. The winner is Sylvanos. Now, how did I come up with such a conclusion when they're so evilly statted against each other? Well, as I said beforehand, even though the virus can be particularly well against weaker opponents, when it comes to people that are evenly matched, it could really backfire on SHAGARU Magala. No one really says this, but most Elder Dragons actually can't be afflicted by its virus. which would actually be horrible against Magala, because if he makes an already Elder Dragon that is probably above it even more powerful across the region, it would practically not have any reign to anything anyway. Also, unlike Sylvanos, SHAGARU MAGALA will not go for the kill. It will try to fight you, but it won't exactly try to pounce on the hunter immediately. It definitely will have a stare down if it ever were to come to it. So Sylvanos has this sort of ferocity in order to actually try to make the fight end quickly. Not only that, but we've already seen creatures up to par with Sylvanos' speed and power actually gain the apex-like state when it comes to the Frenzy Virus. So pretty much the only advantage that SHAGARU MAGALA would have, at least a little bit into the fight, would be its sort of mobility when it comes to flight and its explosive nature, getting rid of Sylvanos' sort of, makeshift plants. However, Sylvanos' abilities sort of counter this, because even though you can fly, most of Sylvanos' long range can affect the creature even if it were to take off. Not only that, every single time Sylvanos moves, he creates life, and that life can be used against something. So it's whenever the creature just moves, compared to when Magala has to makeshift activate the explosive nature in order to get rid of them. It's too much resources that he would have to get rid of just to stay in the game. Even if Sylvanos wasn't afflicted by the virus in order to make him stronger, through attrition, he actually has a lot of things that could end the fight more and more as the time goes on. And it only takes a little bit more time for Sylvanos, a smaller creature that is more nimble than this guy, in order to get a shot to the neck in order for it to do a lot of damage. Now, this doesn't mean that SHAGARU MAGALA has no way in order to win the battle. Simply by trying to go for the more explosive and use its sort of energy in order to just keep away Sylvanos and maybe get a few claws attacks could be the thing that actually goes up. The problem is just as he keeps using the virus, this gives Sylvanos more of a chance in order to reach either Frenzy or Apex state, both of which are still bad no matter what. He definitely has win conditions. It's just a really rough fight against this sort of creature. And in fact, against anyone, mind you. Magala against any sort of other opponent is very stringent, because most of the creatures that he faces are either below him or simply can't be affected by the affliction of the virus anyway. It's just a hard fight for Magala anyway. If I were to put this in fractions, I would say that Sylvanos would probably take this fight 8 out of 10 times. 2 of those 10 times, more than likely, SHAGARU MAGALA has either exploded the battlefield so much or has put the reins on Sylvanos so much that he's able to actually fell the creature. But I wouldn't put money on it. So, in conclusion, I believe Sylvanos takes this. But who knows? Put your ideas down in the comment below. Maybe SHAGARU MAGALA has more things that even I haven't seen of. And maybe you can think of some reasons why he would get, more matchup knowledge when it comes to Sylvanos. Either way, this was so fun. I love these creatures to no end. They're my favorite respective monsters from both series, and the fact that they are actually able to be both comparable in attack and speed was already fun enough in order for me to enjoy. So it doesn't even matter to me who won. I'm just so glad that this was actually able to be done at some point. And hopefully, I can do more battles like this in the future. But either way, I just hope you enjoyed it. See you, okay?